We're one church. We said we're going to do this. We're going to do this till we die. We're going to end abortion.
Abortion, no matter how you measure it, is thriving in South Carolina, and that is wrong, and that needs to stop.
I'd rather have a group of people who are committed to the gospel and the law of God and are willing to open their mouths to the world than 25,000 people satisfied with walking around streets and then going home and laying their heads on their pillows.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. It's easy to overlook those words written by a bunch of old dead white guys. Sometimes you're told that they don't matter anymore because, hey, they did bad stuff too. Well, guess what? Shock, they were human beings. Fallen, sinful men. The vast majority of whom confessed Christ and accepted his redemption. Does that make us a Christian nation? No, it doesn't. And it depends on what you mean by that, right? I submit to you that a nation whose laws are founded on biblical principles and which administers those laws is a Christian nation. So now we can have a debate because we have the founding, but will we enforce them? That's the question. I've had the privilege of spending the last 24 years of my life working in professional paid politics. I'm the past vice president of the National Association for Gun Rights. I was privileged to help build that organization from nearly nothing up to 4.5 million members. Before that, I worked in state gun rights politics. And I got involved with that because when I was 2 years old, my dad ran for office. Now, I don't start counting my career until I actually started getting paid, which was about 18 years later. So I've grown up in politics. But the reason I went into doing it professionally is because I believe in the issues. I believe in the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And God has provided some amazing opportunities. I got to build the team that has now passed constitutional carry, or been instrumental in passing it, in 21 states. Do y'all know what constitutional carry means? It means that the term right to carry permit is an oxymoron. When I started working in politics professionally, and even before that, when I would go down to the Capitol with my dad, who was instrumental in making homeschooling legal in our state. He started homeschooling me before it was legal. Instrumental in passing constitutional carry in our state 20 years later. But when I used to go down with him to the Capitol, there was only one state in the Union that had constitutional carry. And it was the NRA that told us, stop, that's embarrassing. Yee, what do you want, criminals to have guns? And there was 1,000,001 arguments. Why now, son, is not the time. Have you heard that before?
Oh, yes.
Over and over and over again. It's what the political establishment says, and unfortunately, the institutional lobbies become the pointy end of the spear for now is not the time. Oh, sure, that's what we all want to do. But now is not the time. Well, you know what? We didn't accept that at face value, and we said, no, now is the time. Thank you very much. And we will hold you accountable, Mr. Politician. if you vote against something that you say you believe and your constituents demand that you execute, that you carry out. That's how you do it. That's how you get it done. I'm here to tell you, you can do it. It's very possible. I've seen it. God did it in front of my face. And now when I see what he is doing in state after state after state, because I had the opportunity then to leave the National Association for Gun Rights, still highly respect their work, very proud of the work they continue to do. They finally made Texas pass it. Got any, yeah, right, you got any Texans here? Everything's bigger in Texas, including the idiocy of your politicians. Yeah, I do enjoy gigging you. But hey, you guys made it happen. Now, in South Carolina, guess what? Who behind us, the building's empty right now, but when the politicians are here, how many of them will say, I'm not too sure about that Second Amendment stuff? Oh, it's less than what we would call a super minority. Everybody here is pro-gun. You know why? Because you don't get elected if you don't say that. So somebody pointed out earlier, you know, these politicians don't fear God. They only care about getting reelected. That is absolutely true. It's also a constant in politics and always has been. Of course we want God-fearing men. But who's shocked to hear they're in short supply? Does that make you sad? Well, there's some sadness there. But it shouldn't make you sad in the sense that, oh, our country is going such a terrible way. Well, there are some terrible things happening, but this one's not new. Anything good that has happened because people stood up and said, you know what? We are blessed to live in a nation where government is created for the purpose of defending these rights. That's what our founding document says, and they didn't say it by accident. You know what that means? It's our job. It's our fault that the politicians aren't doing what politicians will always refuse to do unless we make them do it. So do they bear fault? Absolutely. They are magistrates. It is their responsibility. They are ministers of God for the good of the people who live here. Well, I can think of a few 100,000 people who no longer live here because they were killed by the permission of the politicians who serve in the building behind us. The men who wrote the Declaration of Independence did not know they were going to win. They, I am sure, in their hearts, were fairly sure they were going to lose. We like to look back at it as the golden age. But I can tell you about the oldest man who signed the Declaration. His name was John Hart. And as they were debating the document and the wording, and the debates got heated, it was Benjamin Franklin who stood and said, in part, "Gentlemen, we must all hang together, or we will each most assuredly hang separately." And they kind of chuckled. It was a bit of a dark joke, because what else could you do? When John Hancock signed the document as the president of the Second Congress, it was his responsibility to sign first, and he stood and said, "Gentlemen, I am writing my name large, that King George may read it without his spectacles." Attaching your John Henry, or give me your John Hancock right here, there is a reason we say that. It's because that is still the only, and now it is the only, visible signature. You can go look at the document. Most of the rest of them have faded enough to where they are indiscernible. But John Hancock's is still right there. You can read it without your spectacles. It was bravado. What did they say at the end? "And to support this declaration, we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." Well, we know what it means for them to pledge their lives. We know several of them died. In fact, 8 of the 56 signers gave their lives during the war. We know what it means for them to pledge their fortunes. Most of you have probably heard that John Hancock, one of the most wealthy men in America, spent most of his fortune supporting the struggle. And he was not alone. Where do you see the wealthy class spending their money for the rights of every person? That alone is remarkable. That is the opposite of Marxism. It is the opposite of greed. But what does it mean for them to pledge their sacred honor? Well, Franklin was referring to it. You see, if you read the Constitution, you will see that bills of attainder are specifically and expressly prohibited in this country. You pass that over because you don't know what that is. It's basically a multi-generational criminal record which is passed by the legislature, in this case it would be Parliament, which not only applies to you, attainting you as traitor, it taints your entire family for generations. It means you cannot own land, you cannot get a good job. They knew that they were dooming their children and grandchildren to poverty if they were caught, convicted, and the British Crown and Parliament had anything to say about it. But that's not where it stops. You would then be given a mock trial 2,000, 3,000 miles away from your home, summarily found guilty of treason, dragged into the public square, hung by the neck, but not until dead, taken down, have yourself cut open from chest to hip, have your entrails burned in front of you while you yet live, and then you would be beheaded and hacked limb from limb. It was called drawing and quartering. It was what was done to William Wallace, and it was still reserved for traitors in the late 1700s. That's what they meant by pledging their sacred honor. Well, the oldest man to sign the Declaration, John Hart, returns home. His wife is on her deathbed. His 13 children, some of whom are grown, some are still young, are scattered to whoever can take them as the British invade his state and his county. And guess who's at the top of the terror watch list? Mr. John Hart. And he sits by his wife's side as she leaves this earth. And as the British, as the story goes, literally marched up his driveway. And he slipped out the back door just in time. He lived outside for a year through the harsh New Jersey winter. We don't know if he ever saw his children again. He may have seen a few of them, but that spring he held a few small positions of trust as the war moved out of the Middle States. And then he died, an old man broken in health. However, as a man who has 13 children is wont to have, John Hart has millions of descendants. One of them married another descendant of Revolutionary War veterans, became my mother and father. My grandma used to sit me down and tell me that story. This is what your grandpas did for freedom. What will you do? And I'm 6. Praise God. I'm 6. I'm sitting there looking at Grandma going, I don't know. How do you live up to that? Well, I've had a lot of time to think about it. Here's the conclusion. You don't have to. That was the point. That was the point. That's why they wrote it down. That's why they fought. And they told us. Why are you doing this? Well, they knew they would be asked that question. They knew the world was asking that question. They put it in the Declaration to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. They were picturing you and me and our preborn neighbors. You don't go and do the things that they did and suffer the things that they suffered and endure the threats that they endured unless you have some motivation. They were picturing us. And they ventured those things and they accomplished those things by God's grace so that you don't have to. What do you need to do? Pay attention to politics, get involved, ask God, what can I do? You look at me, say that guy, he's worked in politics his whole life. Yeah, but I did most of it in bib overalls. I didn't grow up looking like this. I grew up on a ranch out in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota. We figured out how to do this by God's grace, trial and error. You don't have to be somehow plugged into politics to figure it out. Here's what you do need to figure out. Who's your state representative? Who's your state senator? What's the difference between a state senator and a U.S. senator? What's the difference between Congress and the building behind us? Do you know the difference? When do the elections happen? Who's your county commissioner? Who serves on your city council? These are the questions that you need to be able to answer like that. It needs to be second nature. You need to know what your House district number is, what your Senate district number is, what your congressional district. What is the difference in all this stuff? How does it work? Guess what? It's all on Wikipedia, and it's actually accurate. You can just go look it up. It's not hard. So what are you waiting for? Well, maybe you didn't know that's the way it works, but that's what you need to do. You need to sign the petition that's here. If you leave here without signing that petition, guess what? You probably weren't even here. You know why I say that? It's like the tree that falls in the forest. If you attend an event and do not give the organizer your name and your contact info, it didn't happen. It doesn't matter. In the political scheme of things, oh great, there was a crowd here. That's good. Praise God. Thank you for coming. You go home and this is all you do? Yeah, you didn't get much done. Sorry. So hopefully you're here in order to rise up and stand up and strike a blow alongside our forefathers. Do you know that's what excites me the most? That's what I teach my children. There is an opportunity for greatness that cannot be taken away from you. It is God's call. And I tell my children, I will help you do whatever God calls you to do, but until you leave my house, you are called to work with me in ending abortion, protecting rights, defending freedom. And you can stand shoulder to shoulder with John Hart, your grandpa, and strike a blow for freedom and defend life. And it doesn't matter whether you happen to have had ancestors here at the time. You are their posterity. It doesn't matter whether or not you have the same skin color. It doesn't matter whether or not you arrived on the boat yesterday, because a big chunk of my ancestors did arrive not so long ago. You are now their posterity, and you have not only the right, but the solemn duty to stand with the great host and stand up and strike a blow to defend the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now look, go do harm to the bad guys, politically speaking, for a good cause.
Hi, I'm Pastor Jeff Durbin with End Abortion Now. I wanted to let you know that we have a bill of equal protection for all humans from conception in your state. A bill to abolish, criminalize, and end abortion once and for all. I want to invite you to join me at your state capitol for our rally for this bill to end abortion once and for all in your state. I will see you there.